Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell. I'm a doula in Washoe County, Nevada, a Medicaid provider, a lactation educator, childbirth educator, and mom of 18. You can find me and connect on doulainreno.com. Remember, give a shout out to those who are brave enough to share their stories with us on how they have become parents. Let's dive in. Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jen Campbell, and I'm here with Sara today. And I didn't pronounce your last name because I suddenly blanked it.
Oh,
Ecklein.
Sara Ecklein. That's
I did it
okay.
right. Okay, Ecklein. I had like a brain moment. Jump in and tell me about your parenting journey.
Well, my parenting journey. I'll not start from the beginning because that's probably too long of a story. But I'll start with pregnancy.
Oh,
So yeah, we had my daughter, our daughter Ava in the final days of 2022. And it's funny. We'll definitely get into, a bit about me and the work I do, but I am a planner.
yes.
I am a planner. And it's just who I am, and I definitely strength train that skill with the work as a professional fiduciary, but my therapist would also say it's a gift of my trauma.
Okay.
And how my brain works is I think kind of 20, 30 years in advance. So I'm always planning, I'm pretty structured. And early 2022, we're kind of coming out of the COVID, right? Shelter in place. And my husband and this actually was before we were married, we're like, let's hold off, trying for baby. And we're gonna have a year of lots of travel, right?
Yay. Okay.
So we were like, we're gonna go to Bali and we're gonna go and do a Euro ski trip and spend a year like just, going everywhere and enjoying life since we're coming out of this, shelter in place and all of the insanity with COVID. And I kid you not, a month later we found out we were pregnant.
Oh
So this,
no, I was going to live so vicariously through you. I mean, oh yes, that like
yeah.
congratulations and I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's okay. But it's funny, I've always wanted to be a mom. It's, I'm one of those women where it's like very early on, it was just kind of clear. I'm the oldest, and I've always been a bit of a mother hen,
Mhm.
taking care of littles, like, nannying all through. Like I think I started watching the neighbors' kids when I was like probably 8 years old, just very very young. And so it's just kind of always felt like part of my path. But it's funny, while it's part of the plan, of course, when you decide like, oh, like, it's not going to be this year, we'll push it off. That's when baby decides to come. Um, yeah, and also, part of I guess my planning and my vision has always been to have a home birth.
Mm.
I'm happy to say that, I did my dreams were fulfilled. We had our amazing home birth. I was told by the midwife, it was a textbook labor. She came 2 days after Christmas. And yeah, she was born in our house in our bathroom, and I was standing. And
Awesome.
yeah,
How
yeah. And
did
leading
you
up,
how did
yeah,
you decide to do because I mean I want
yeah,
to do a birth center birth the first time like I innately knew I'm going to breastfeed these things are going to happen and I don't know where that came from exactly so I know when I'm asking that question you may not know where it came from jumping into a home birth your first time I think can be intimidating. I'm always really proud of women who decide to do
yeah,
that.
yeah. It is a few things. So I'm a Bay Area native. So I think in the Bay Area, like the community, it's maybe a little bit more open than
Okay.
most to that. Um, but I in high school, I worked at a health food store. That was
Mhm.
actually my first like official job. And I was just, exposed to so many like different, alternative medicines. I worked alongside an acupuncturist. And I was like 16 years old, and just exposed to a lot. And I remember reading a book. I can't remember what it was about, but there was just one chapter specifically about like birthing in this country. Um, and really it really impacted me where I was like, oh, I want to birth at home. I also lived with for a summer in Belgium, and I
Okay.
happened to live with homeopathic doctors, so I was just like exposed to a
Yeah.
lot of like alternative ways, and that for sure has, shaped who I am and how I view health. And I also think so much of my work now,
Yeah.
I work alongside clients, as they're aging, and also through hospice and death and dying. And, that advocacy piece, is just a thread through my life,
Yeah.
my personal and professional life. Um, so yeah, so the home birth was for me just kind of always there. I knew that's what I wanted. And a bit more of the story is that, of course, my husband was, well, I shouldn't say of course, but I think more husbands than not are pretty fearful and maybe not
Yeah.
trusting of that. I married an engineer, and
Mm.
so he needs all the details and the
Yep.
facts. And he's also Persian, and I feel like, as a whole, Persian culture really like it loves like doctors and really puts a lot of trust in them, where I would say I err on the side of being a little bit more distrustful.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that's where we partnered with an amazing, amazing midwife. And boy, was she just so patient and breaking down like all the facts. Like she was the right person for us.
Yeah.
So that, of course I got what I want, but she also spent the time of really letting him know like the science and the information and the facts. And she was also a midwife that was like, if anything is abnormal, like we would be transferring to the
Hmm.
hospital. So I also had, that kind of, plan B, where, I even met with a doctor that, would be seeing me if I did need to transfer, and I upfront transferred all my medical files. So, if I did have to transfer, I'm not just some lady in labor off the streets.
Which is
So,
way above and beyond. I did that
yeah.
my first, yeah, in the beginning. Afterwards, I didn't transfer, but I knew who I would go. I had, you have it kind of worked out. This is your backup plan.
Yeah. Yeah, it was my backup plan. And it was good. Like for when I actually first went in expecting I would do what they call concurrent care of like seeing her. And she was like, honestly, you're super healthy. Like nothing's abnormal. Like this is going to be so over the top for you. And what also was wonderful is that she actually used to be a home birth midwife. Yeah, and
I
now
don't know
was
how
like,
you got a fairy tale, but
yeah.
you did.
Yeah,
You
so
did.
yeah, the like the two like midwives like knew each other, and then worked together. So it just felt really supportive and
Yeah.
right. And all of that of course like plays into, I think, feeling safe at
Hmm.
home, of course, and then kind of going back to like having like a solid plan. So yeah, it was wonderful. My husband, definitely, got on board, and especially that like that third trimester, there's just so we had a lot of visits, and he really would come and participate and ask all his questions, and it's like, yeah, we're doing it. But I think I also felt really, it was really clear that I was going to again like challenge and advocate, because when he brought up like, oh, I don't, this doesn't feel safe to me.
Hmm.
Part of my family story too is that my mother wanted to have a home birth, and my dad didn't feel safe with it. So she had I was born in San Francisco at the Kaiser Hospital, and also everything was totally healthy and normal, and she had a great birth and it was fine. But I think knowing a bit of that, I was like, it's 2022, and I think collectively, like I'm really done as a woman of like us tiptoeing around male like comfort and safety.
Yep.
I'm like, you know,
Sorry, bud.
this is yeah, sorry, this is really about what feels right for me. And so, we built a plan around that. So, yeah, so that's
I love that. And you as a planner and him as an engineer, the last client that I just had that delivered, her husband was an engineer and they had a home birth. It was their first baby. But for him, the safety was creating the hospital birth plan
yes.
in the event
Yeah.
of a transport. This
Yes.
is how things happen. I drive my car separately. I will meet
Yep.
you there and you will have your birth plan printed, and this is how it still looks completely unmedicated, but we kind of have an idea of what you would let go of in what order, because birth is unpredictable. And I said,
Yes.
once that's done, once you do this birth plan and you print it, just we don't have to think about it anymore. So it's like life insurance or doing a trust, or like you do it so that it's there if you need it and then you don't worry about it. So
It's exactly we did exactly the same thing.
yeah,
Actually, our doula helped us mostly with that.
yeah,
And it was really, I think helpful, for everyone,
yep.
but definitely like for people that love the control and the certainty, like that's kind of one of the pieces. So
Or have concerns. Like, I understand that you want to do this, and I know that 99% of the time there's no issue. But if we're the 1%, then what? Like, what do we
yeah,
do? The engineer mind tends to not be able to function if there's not a plan, a contingency plan in place. And so that's all it is. It's a contingency plan. So yay, you got exactly what you wanted, had a beautiful birth.
yeah. And Jen, we're still breastfeeding.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you said 2 years, and I was like, it must be done. But no.
No, two
Yay.
and a half years. Yeah, we're still breastfeeding. And we're actually beginning to take like the initial steps with weaning, which boy, like that is like so hard. The things that you just can't prepare for,
Yep.
you just don't know. But yeah, I'm like ready, like I'm in a place of like I'm ready to have my body back.
Yes.
And Ava has her opinions too, and toddlers definitely let you know.
They do. I know. It's like infant led weaning, right? But once they hit a point where they have a voice, you're not infant leading anything. You're toddler surviving. It's a little. I think I was lucky. Most of my kids kind of naturally did between 18 months, and then 2 years and 3 months is the longest.
It's
But I
2 and 4 months.
yeah.
So yeah, we're
So I feel that, but I was tandem nursing, so I'd have the
oh,
next baby.
oh my
And then
God.
that older one just kind of, I think that was part of what led it. Like, things, my body changed. It tasted differently. I got through your milk coming
Yeah.
in with this toddler, which was amazing to regulate my milk, like stop me from feeling like I'm exploding.
Yeah.
And then they kind of just petered off on their own when the baby took over. But like outside of that, the first one and the last one, I mean, when they just showed signs of interest in the ability to be distracted and not have to use breastfeeding, it's that happy, sad pull where you want to
Yes.
encourage that. And at the same time, you're letting go of something big that was part of your life.
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
totally like her comfort
Yep.
and her safety. And yes. Yeah, we're reading all the books and planting the seeds and
Yep.
um yeah, we'll see. But
Dad has to
the
do
journey
bedtime.
continues.
Yeah. I mean, like everything, you've gone through a pregnancy and the first year, and I swear the first year goes by in a blink. And pregnancy,
Right.
just the last month, took 7,632 years. I mean, like your sense of
Doesn't
time,
it?
yes.
Oh,
And
and I was almost 42 weeks. We didn't talk about that.
nice
Pregnant.
job.
So
Well done.
her yeah, I think her, due date, expecting date was December 16th.
Uh-huh.
Maybe it was the 18th. It's one of the two, anyways. And I was always she's pretty tall. She still is. And so I was always measuring kind of ahead. So once, I got to 36 weeks, which was Thanksgiving, mind you, and my husband's birthday, I was like mentally like, oh, she's gonna come any day now. And oh boy, I Really, I that
Nope.
was bad.
That was a
Yeah.
bad 7.5 weeks.
Yes. Yeah. And so I also didn't make any holiday plans, no Christmas plans, because I was like, we're going to be postpartum, right? She's going
Right.
to be born before Christmas. No, came 2 days after Christmas.
Yep.
So that was hard. But boy, yeah, the night that she came, I think that day before I walked 2 miles. I went to a 7 p.m. yoga class. And then I, for whatever reason, decided to stay up till midnight watching stand-up comedy.
That's what did
And
it.
then I was woken up at 3 and was like, oh yeah, I'm in labor.
Yep.
She came by 9:30. So
Holy cow.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
7 hour
Well,
labor,
we're
like
not going to talk about that. People will get
yeah.
very upset. I mean, good for you.
Yeah, it was fast. I mean, she
That
took
is
her
fast.
time, but once she
Hmm.
decided, and so actually that's been a bit of even just now with like the weaning process. I've just
Yeah.
reminded like, yeah, that kind of always has been my dance with her,
Hmm.
of me feeling ready. And like once she's ready, that transition comes really quickly for her. Um, but yeah, that's a bit of our kind of differences in our dance.
That's great. And once it's over, and you know how fast this first 2 years went.
Oh, I know.
It's like a blink. Yeah. You know what? My daughter that was 2 weeks late was my easiest delivery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's great.
they had time to to bake.
By the time she was ready, she was real ready.
Yeah.
Um, your job through all of this. Can we jump into that? Because
Yeah.
you mentioned fiduciary. I probably wouldn't know what that was if I didn't know what that was. So
Yeah.
take
So
me
let's
through that.
define that for
Yes,
listeners.
define what you
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, so in the state of California, we do things a little differently.
In
And we have,
Reno, we would
yeah.
say that different, not so nicely, but okay, we'll go with that.
Yeah, so we have this very small, it's a very small profession, and it's called professional fiduciary. And we have licensing, and we're one of two states that does, which honestly is wonderful for consumers because there's so much that we do, and there is that level of oversight and protection for people, which there should be. Um, but there's only about 900 actively licensed fiduciaries in the state. So there's few of us. And I describe a professional fiduciary as an umbrella term. And under that umbrella of a fiduciary, I can wear different hats. So some of that is like I could act as a conservator or guardian. I don't know about, I know you're in Nevada, so I don't know if
Yeah.
you use the same language, but just for listeners to know, a conservator is just basically a guardian for someone over the age of 18. And then I can wear the hat of a trustee, an executor, and then I can also act as someone's agent, whether that's for finance in the power of attorney document or as a healthcare decision maker. So,
Which is that's where it seems crazy to me. Like when I was reading your information before we got on, like, okay, this makes sense. The trust, the money, those things make
yeah,
sense. Once you
yeah,
become a guardian and it's for sort of end of life stuff, that seems like a completely different
yeah.
profession.
Yes. You know, like yes and no. I think that's also why I love this work so much
Mhm.
because like you're I mean, I'm just like such of service. I don't, there's not a day that goes by that I don't question the impact that I have, especially for my clients'
Mm.
lives. I sit in their lives so special, and especially for the ones where I'm making healthcare decisions. In my practice, I don't have any conservatorships or guardianships. I really specialize in trust administration, special needs trusts, and I work with a lot of clients in the planning phase. And that's when I'm named like as a successor trustee. So, they're healthy and well. It could be like, just you, for
Yeah.
example, they're healthy and well, and for whatever reason, they need to have a professional or would like to have a professional named. And then often I'm named also in the power of attorney documents, and
Mhm.
then also sometimes healthcare directive.
And
And that's
that,
a lot of
yes,
times for my solo agers, I call them. So I have a lot of single ladies where it's like they never had children, they're either widowed or no long or never were married. And so who's going to be, supporting them through their end of life and then after death? And so that's also one of the, I think, the real benefits of our profession, is that we can kind of meet clients comprehensively and
Mhm.
provide that service, whether it's managing money and also making healthcare decisions. Just to contrast that with, like, a lot of people think of like a corporate trustee, like, so
Yeah,
you can name a bank. Banks can't act as an agent.
right.
So for those people that need all of those services, it can be nice to just have that one person supporting you, from like paying your bills, if and when you're incapacitated. And so I think planning for incapacity is a big piece, to the work that I do. And one of the things and reasons why I love coming on the podcast, I find more people than not, if conversations like this, getting your estate plan done is on their radar, more times than not, people are only thinking and planning for after death. And
Yeah.
that's just a big piece. And one of the things that I love to speak about is that our estate planning documents, yes, does cover that. But also, what's just as important is to be planning for incapacity. So, obviously, that's where the advanced healthcare directive for
Right.
me.
And that's a connection.
Yeah.
And as soon as I said, like, I don't get how it's connected, my grandmother passed away and she had it set up really, really well. And we all knew
Wonderful.
she had it set up really, really well. But
Yay.
we did our
Yay. Yeah.
own trust like 8 years ago. And that's when you start talking about, like, are you an organ donor? Do you want
Yep.
a DNR? So
Yep.
yes, that makes sense. Even though in my mind it wasn't necessarily, it is end of life planning. We did a lot of
Mhm.
that in our trust kind of
Yes.
automatically. Who has power of attorney, who takes control of all of your assets, like we've
Yeah.
done all of that
And also, like,
ourselves.
once you become a parent, the guardians for your child. I mean, that's where, for the parent,
That was
the
that was huge for us. Yeah.
yes, yeah, and that's a
Yeah.
big piece. Honestly, that was the hardest for piece for me, like, of
Okay.
of my husband and I updating our documents. I think so much of my journey of becoming, a parent is really feeling this vulnerability
Mm.
that I never felt before. I mean, I'm, fiercely independent. I was a parentified child. I come to this work for so many reasons. Being kind of in charge and responsible is just, it's in my DNA.
Hmm.
It's who I am. And, once you become a parent, you realize, oh, damn, I can't do this alone. I've got to build a village. I need to ask for help. And so that's been so much of my evolution, of becoming a parent. And also just really lighting up. I mean, I've always loved the work that I do, but it's brought that much more meaning because I think I feel and really connect with that vulnerability, which, whether
Yeah.
you're, a parent with a child with special needs, so that's a lot of people that I serve,
Yep.
and needing to plan, for two lifetimes, not just yours, but
Yep.
your child with special needs, or you're, like the example of the solo ager where, you're not married, you don't have children, and you need to partner with a professional. Like, that is really vulnerable. And of course, it's one thing to know that mentally, but I think it's different to just really experience that. And that's been so much of my journey of becoming a parent. I'll just paint one picture. I hired
Okay.
an assistant so I could go on maternity leave. I trained her for 3 months leading up to my leave. Jen, I kid you not, she gives me notice a week after birth.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, again, it, like, that just hit me. So I didn't have the kind of traditional maternity leave. Thankfully, my clients are very understanding, and, I was able to kind of support and, really be, um, kind of bare bones. But
Yeah, but stuff happens that you can't expect
and you can't plan
or plan
for.
for. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that that's really kind of the dance that, just me as a person, that I'm kind of always evolving and learning more. Um Having a plan is just, I think, so crucial. One in three people in this country actually have an estate plan. So that leaves most really
Oh,
like not
that's
in a good position. So not doing that, not executing the plans, it does yourself and your loved ones such a disservice, because honestly, what that looks like is a crisis will happen, right? Or you'll pass away, and everything's going to go through probate, and it's
and
going to
probate
be
in Nevada is awful because even
it's
though it's a community
awful.
property state and I'm married, if my husband died, even with that, we're married as community property, everything
Yep.
still goes through a year and a half of probate.
Yep.
And
It's
I
very
watched a woman go
slow
through
and
that. Yeah,
expensive.
oh my gosh. And
Yep, it's
everything's tied
expensive.
up. Like you can't, you are
Yeah.
sunk.
Yes.
That's crazy. And if you just think, well, we're married and my name's on most stuff and it's community property, so cool. But no, it is such a
No.
slap in reality. My neighbor, her husband died suddenly and unexpectedly, and I helped her through part of probate, and I was just astounded at how abysmal and archaic the system is and how much it hurts the people left
It's
behind.
so true. You said I couldn't say it better myself. It absolutely is. I mean, it doesn't, and honestly, since COVID, I mean, I feel like the courts have just been so backed up, and it's like I administered an estate, and it was simple estate, no real estate, like an investment account and a checking account. That's it. And it
Mhm.
took over 2 years to
Oh,
administer. And it's just, you pull your hair out where it's like, it doesn't need to be like this, but it
no.
is. So that's where, the starting place really is getting an estate plan. But, after that, there's so much more that we can do. And this is so much, I have a podcast called The Legacy of Love.
Oh,
And,
yay. I'm glad
and
you brought that up. Yes.
yeah, and so really, I mean, what inspired me to launch the podcast, and and also just I love podcasting. I love having cool conversations like this with you, that like conversations where this matter so much and I can reach more people. Um is is really connecting to this, like what I was talking, my my path as a mother and as a
Hmm.
parent, and really seeing the importance of planning.
Hmm.
But there's so much that can happen like along the way. So some of the things that, I don't know if this is like feeling derailed from the conversation, but I'm happy to kind of expand a little bit more of what I find in my practice when I see things really go well, versus like those that don't.
Yeah,
Um,
and I love the connection. Like you were doing this before. You've had this business since 2014. You had your daughter in 2022, and that was eye-opening even to you at how much can go wrong and how hard these decisions are.
Yeah. Well, and just to clarify, I've been doing this work since 2014, but I started my practice in 2021.
Yeah.
So that's been, yeah, this work. I mean, I've, like I said, I've always loved it. I described it as a head and heart alignment. Like when
Hmm.
I found the work, it just connected so many things for me. And of course, being of service, but also just, it's just always, you're always learning something,
Yeah.
because like laws change, tax codes change, every client needs different types of services.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'm just managing money, sometimes I'm and I would say more times than not, I'm kind of doing everything
Yeah.
from
Yep.
like the healthcare decision
Well,
making
from
to
my perspective,
finances.
if I find you and there's a
Mhm.
list that needs to get done, I'm going to be like, Sarah, I just do it all. Like I don't
Yeah.
want to piecemeal it because I think that there are there's room for error in that. So tell us, yes, this is a great way to kind of wrap up our conversation is what happens when things go really well and what happens when things really don't.
Yeah, so actually I've been working on a framework.
Okay.
So this is going to be the first time I share it publicly.
Yay.
So yeah, I would love to hear from you and also listeners if it resonates. But I call it the legacy framework. And so it's an acronym. So the first part, that L, stands for love. And I think estate planning has so much room to evolve and change, kind of meet us where we're at as humans collectively. Like we need to be approaching this really from this place of love. And I find more times than not, people are confused and just want to check it off the box of things to do. And that energy is just so different than, oh, I really deeply understand the power that, an estate plan and leaving this legacy has for myself, my own life, but also that future generation.
Mm-hmm.
The second, so the E, is to really be educated. And a lot, this is a lot of where and why I host a podcast. I love having conversations like this. If listeners like to, is interested in learning more, definitely come over and listen, because I have a lot of attorneys, other professionals where this is how we're supporting clients. And I think that people not outsourcing their power is like a big piece for me, right? In the work, right? We've talked so much about like advocacy. Like with my own home birth, I was like, oh no, like I'm in charge. Yes, I hire those professionals, right? I partner with a midwife, I partner with a doula, and we sit down as a team, we ask those questions and we come up with a solid plan. We need to do exactly that with estate planning.
Yep.
And I find more times than not, people are feeling intimidated by their attorney. They don't want to feel stupid and ask the dumb question. And so I think that's where partnering with the right team, finding an estate planning attorney in your state that you feel like you can ask all the dumb questions,
Mm-hmm.
that's who you should be working with.
Yeah.
If you work with a financial advisor, same thing. Like you shouldn't just be outsourcing that. You should be sitting down and really understanding, what this plan is. Because if you're just kind of, partnering with, or if you're hiring an attorney and just expecting them to do all the work, but they don't really understand your wishes, that's where there can just be this huge gap. Um, and so the next one, G, I just have get it done. Like at the end of the day, we do need to execute these documents. Only having conversations, only writing a letter, like that is really not enough. We
Mm-hmm.
do need to have these legal documents. We need to execute them and get them done. Also know that these are living documents, so we're going to need to be updating them over the years as our
Yep.
lives change and evolve. Um, and then the A, right? That's the next one, is the administrative work. So there is homework after you execute your plan. I don't know if you've gone through this, Jen. I'm
Yes.
hoping. It's a
Yep.
lot of work. I mean,
Yep.
even for us, it took us like probably 6 months to really, you got to update your accounts, you got to update your beneficiary designations. That's a huge piece where not every attorney is doing, I feel like, the service and the hand holding of letting the client know. And this is where a lot of times I see downstream where someone might have a trust, but if their accounts weren't properly titled or their beneficiary designations weren't updated, then a probate needs to open because it never was put in the trust.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big piece, and doing the homework. And then the C is really communicating your wishes. And this is to, the appropriate parties. It's going to be with your loved ones, but also with your, I call them proxies. So whoever's being named, whether that's your successor trustee, your agent under the durable power of attorney, the agent under your advanced healthcare directive. We do not want to be thinking like, oh, surprise, either you're incapacitated or you're dead and you've been called on to act. Like these people need to be prepared and informed and knowing that they're part of the plan. That's another piece where I see where plans fail, where the conversation was never had. People are executing these documents, they shove it in the drawer, never have a conversation. And it does such a disservice because this is where families feud. Some people feel entitled to some stuff. They
Mhm.
never knew what the plan was. But then also people also might move out of the area,
Yep.
might never be willing to act. Also, a lot of times people will pass away even, and then that role is vacant. So that's a real crucial piece. The other piece that I love is, that's tied to kind of communicating your wishes. You can write, we call it typically like a letter of intent, and
Yep.
it sits just alongside your estate plan and really communicates, not in legal jargon, but from you, like, this was my wishes. This is what I really want, whether it's for your beneficiaries or whatever. There's so much detail and narrative that you can include, and it helps downstream as, if in those events of incapacity and death, of just knowing, oh, this is what you really wanted and really saw, for your legacy. And the last piece with why is that we should be really having a yearly check-in
Hmm.
at the very least with ourselves, and again, what that can look like is, double checking your beneficiary designations, making sure that the people named in your estate plan are still the appropriate people to be named. And I think overall where I'm seeing the theme of when things go well, it's because, people and families, this is something that we don't avoid talking about. We lean into the realities that we all are going to die,
Yep.
that willing to face, our own mortality, willing to face difficult conversations. Um, and and it's something that we tend to in our lives on a regular basis. Again, it's not just like this, kind of the picture that I initially painted of, let's just check it off the box of things to do and get it done with and shove it in the drawer and never talk about it. This is something that we continue to talk about, and really what I see it is like a dinner time conversation. So,
Yeah.
you know that is kind of, start to finish my legacy framework, and it really kind of just feeds into yourself. It feeds back in where if you do need to make an update, then you're kind of back to that, okay, let's make sure we're moving from this place of love and intention, and hopefully leaving the world a better place, right?
Yep. We just updated one part of ours on Monday. And I'm like, we have got to finish this because it's an annual thing. I think understanding all the different parts of it, making decisions like that first time is the hardest. It's the scariest. Like, I don't want to be morbid. Well, you're gonna die. We all
Yes.
are. We're not being
Yes.
morbid. We're planning because, and I remember before we did our trust, I looked at my husband and I'm like, "You better die really well because I'm gonna come and kill you if we don't get this stuff done. Like, I will hunt
Yeah.
you down and I will kill you." Because leaving the people behind is one thing you have control over. Part of it is maybe how you die. That's a huge part of what I think people don't realize, whether you're in
Yeah.
hospice, like, do you have a DNR? Like, how do you
Yeah.
want this to go in a situation where you have control over some of it?
Yeah, and that's obviously going to change, right? When I'm working
It
with
is.
clients in their 90s versus in their 40s and 50s, like right now I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I'm not a DNR. Like, do everything you can to keep my body alive." But that's
Right.
going to look different as we age,
It
right?
is, yes, and in different situations. I mean, my husband's wife died, and
Okay.
he went through that
Mm.
process. And I met him like a year and a half later, but his youngest daughter was 4, and I was like, we need to do a
Oh,
trust. You've gone through this, so you know
yeah.
how awful it is to be on the side of a survivor. Being a survivor is
Yeah.
can be really
Oh,
traumatic. And I'm like, she'll end up in foster care. It will be a mess. And so our doing the trust was, look, we're in this situation that's really unusual. And because you just
yeah.
went through it, why would you ever want to leave someone the way you were? And it was sudden and unexpected. She was very
Oh,
young, but
oh, yeah.
going living through something like that, he lost his dad and his wife within 6 months. And
Wow.
um I didn't have to do a lot of convincing because he had lived through it. As it can happen young, it can be unexpected. And when you have kids that are under 18, we need to figure that part out. We need
Yes.
to have this set up. A will doesn't do it. Writing on a piece of paper with spit and a handshake does not do it. It will
Yeah.
be abysmal for the people left behind. But if you're not faced with that kind of mortality, it's easy to put it off and put it off and put it off. And I think people do that a lot. So I love what you do. We have end of life
Oh,
doulas here in the state doing a lot of legislation and trying to work on this. So
I love that. Oh, Jen, this has been like so much fun.
so fun.
I love the work that you do too.
Thanks.
I thought I would be a birth worker.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I did
See?
early on. I was like, I thought I would be like a midwife. And it honestly, where I found this work was I was witness to someone's first death, to the first death in my life. And
Yep.
wow, I was like, oh, so the portals of life, I've just always
Yes.
kind of felt called to. So yeah, I applaud the work that you do as well. And also having conversations like this,
So
I
fun.
love. Yeah, so just as we wrap up,
Mhm.
just letting listeners know that I also have a free download. It's called the
Perfect.
Legacy of Love Workbook. And really, it's more wherever you're at in your estate planning journey, whether you've already done it and maybe you know you need to update it, or
Yeah.
it's one of those things that are it's like, oh, I know I need to get it done. It's really an exercise and questions to just get in that right state of mind that we talked about. Like,
Yeah.
we really want to be moving from this place of love. What are my true wishes and values? What is it that I want to pass on? I'm going to assume that most of your listeners are parents or about to
Yep.
be parents. So, really getting intentional and clear with ourselves, I think that that is where and why this is why I have the podcast called, The Legacy of Love. It can have such a ripple in not just our life, and then it can have through our whole family system and that next generation. I mean, we really have the power to transform, and I think that's where we can change the world and the collective if we move more intentionally with more love. So all, of course, that'll be included in the show notes. We can link
Yay.
to that. Yes. Yeah.
I know you
Jen.
do a podcast, so you just did your own closing. This is
Yeah.
awesome. Sarah's time. Thank you so much for being on. It was an honor.
Oh, likewise, Jen.